Morning. And I'd like to welcome everybody today. Hopefully you're all doing well. And my name is Jean Ernst, and I run the Investor Network here at Launch New York. And welcome to the Meet the Founder Pitch and Q&A session for Return Bio. Today we're joined by Chris Thomas, the founder and CEO, and Chris will share more about the round and the company shortly. The format of today's session is we'll begin with Chris providing an overview and the pitch for Return Bio, and then after the pitch, we'll move into Q&A where we'll open up the floor for questions. Chris, I'll pass it over to you so you can get started with the pitch.
Sounds great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm really glad to have you here. Grateful for the opportunity to be presenting my baby that I've been developing for the past 4 years, as you just heard in the preamble to this. This is a really great potential solution to microplastics in the environment, which is why I'm doing this. This is really our North Star here. This is something that's affecting all of us, and we have something that's really different that can help us to tackle this big problem. And so, oops, just double checking you guys are all seeing my, let me try to share it again.
There we go.
There you go. Now I have you here, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And so why we are trying to tackle this challenge, because this is a serious public health issue. This isn't just pollution that would be nice to take care of. This is something that's actually affecting you, me, our grandkids. And I think you've heard this fact before. It's been bandied about, and I've checked it. That's actually true. We do eat up to a credit card's worth of microplastics every month. And it's not for nothing. I mean, these are something that actually causes real health issues. There was a study that came out last year that showed that 70% of us actually have microplastics in our arteries. And those of us that do, we're 4.5 times more likely to have fatal consequences when we have heart-related issues. And so, the challenge of microplastics in health is still unfolding. We're still learning more every day. But what we do know is that this is something that needs to be fixed. We know enough. This is a challenge that needs to be fixed, and we're not going to recycle our way out of it. We're not going to reuse our way out of it. This is a rapidly growing global economy with lots of folks who need single-use plastics and single-use materials. So the only way we're going to fix this is with a fundamental transformation of the plastics economy. And so that's what we're developing at RETRN, is a material that enables us to do that, to rebuild our food system and our packaging system with new, high-performing bioplastics that are truly safe and aren't going to create microplastics. And so this is something really different in the sense that customers, the industry is excited. So they have looked at what we have and they validated that this is something that actually can change the industry for the better. We have tons. This is all inbound interest from customers in consumer goods, in manufacturing, in chemical provision to the paper and packaging industry, who are looking to work with us, looking to acquire materials. These materials are coatings for paper-based food packaging. And so we're replacing the plastic that's in paper-based food packaging, things like polyethylene in your coffee cup or PFAS on your molded fiber to-go trays. And we're also allowing the paper and packaging industry to replace plastic packaging entirely with fully compostable, home compostable, marine biodegradable, recyclable equivalents. So we have a huge backlog of customers who are looking to acquire these materials, who have tested them, who are testing them right now, verifying our performance, and even paying us at a really early stage and small scale, which is very, very different for this industry. Typically, they don't. Normally, these customers take tons of material for free. That's typically how the industry operates, is they test at much larger scales without even paid recompense. But for us, they see the potential and they want to support it early on because this is something that they need. And they need it because there's a massive growing market opportunity that isn't being met by other bioplastics. And I think this is something we all in this room, in this digital space, intuitively understand. I'm sure some of you at some point or another have been at a conference or a talk and you've used a straw that has fallen apart when you're trying to use it, or some cutlery that's been really frustrating and hasn't really worked for picking up your food, or a knife that's sawing through. And so these are other bioplastics that aren't really making the grade. And it's not just their performance that you can intuitively understand, but it's also their sustainability. They're not recyclable, home compostable, marine biodegradable. And they're also usually based on the production of food crops, things like corn. Corn, we're growing sugarcane to create plastics, which isn't really sustainable or scalable. And there's this massive growing need. There's this $50 billion bioplastics market we're expecting that's growing into the $700 billion packaging market. And they need solutions. These aren't the right solutions for this. They need something new to actually address this emerging demand. And so that's where we come in because we are different from our competitors in a lot of ways. We're poised to actually answer this. And there's four key ways which we are differentiated from our predecessors who are working right now, which customers say they're not good enough. Things like NatureWorks and PLA, which is probably the most common thing you come across, or customer or providers who have failed very recently. Danimer was the largest competitor to us in the US, the largest bioplastic provider in the US for a long time, multi-billion-dollar company that recently went bankrupt. It's because they fell short. They fell short in their feedstock, basic production on food crops. Their material properties weren't cutting it. Things like NatureWorks is end of life, being only industrially compostable. And so we answer this by creating something that is fully compostable, recyclable. Our feedstock basis on waste feedstocks allows us to make something that's actually sustainable and helps us to reduce costs. And the most important thing, the thing that's most exciting, is our material properties. Because every one of these predecessors, PLA, it's a single material. Other PHA companies, polyhydroxyalkanoate, only had one or two materials. They don't have the building blocks. And so that's the most exciting thing for industry and competitor and customers when we talk to them, is that every other bioplastic that you know of, that you've heard of, that you've seen before, is only working with one or two building blocks, one or two essential chemical building blocks to address this issue. And when you're trying to replace petroleum plastics, this is a highly mature, well-developed industry. Think of like a common plastic bag that you've used before. That's 7 different polymer building blocks in that one material. And so you're not going to be able to replace petroleum-based plastics, these complex materials, with one thing that you find out in nature. I think we've taken them as far as we can, but if you actually want to have full market penetration and the ability to replace petroleum-based plastics at large, you need all the building blocks. And that's something that we've done. We've unlocked all of these bioplastic, biopolymer building blocks to make new materials. When I show this is the slide I would love to use. And if any of you are chemists, maybe you would enjoy this. This is what I normally show to customers, bioplastics experts. I've shown this to people who have worked at places that were major competitors before. When I show them this and talk about how we have full control between all of these different polymer building blocks, how we can mix and match and tune them from 0 to 100%, their eyes pop out of their head because they know this is a game changer. And they know that this has untold possibilities for the types of products we're going to be able to make. And the reason that we are able to do this is because we're really good at engineering bacteria. We've made new microbes that are able to tunably create, depending on how we manipulate our fermentation process, different sets of bioplastics that have different melting temperatures, different flexibilities, sealability, and we formulate them as emulsions, which is something that no other biopolymer has been able to be formulated as satisfactorily for industry. So we're making these drop-in for new processes that other biopolymers have not been able to be formulated as. And we've engineered our microbes to be able to utilize broad waste feedstocks that are co-located from customer sites. And so like one of the major feedstocks we look at is a waste from paper packaging called fiber rejects. So here's a fun fact for you to at least walk away with one thing from this. There's 500,000 to 1 million tons of fiber rejects created in North America every year in the process of paper packaging. These are extremely low value, plant-derived waste resources that often go to landfills or at best to the animal bedding market, depending on where oil prices are. And so with us, there's the opportunity to create these new drop-in materials and make them from customer waste inputs in a co-location scenario that they are very excited to explore with us. And at end of life, we're making things that are just made from paper, our natural biopolymer building blocks that are going to degrade safely into the environment, just like a piece of paper would, just like any other natural material would, um, in a natural environment. And so where we are right now is lab scale. So we're creating 100, 200 milliliter samples of these liquid emulsions and shipping them out to the array of customers who are looking to get their hands on them to validate their performance as they're seeking a solution for their sustainable chemical inputs. And we're raising right now to answer their real demand. Because while we can deliver something at lab scale and they can test in their lab scale and validate performance, that's nice. What they really care about, which I've alluded to before, is the manufacturability. That is, when you put these materials into machines which are representative or identical in some way to what they will use in a manufacturing scenario, will it work? And to do that, there's a larger volume requirement than we make right now. You need not hundreds of milliliters, you need liters of material, 10 to 20 liters for these small pilot scale pieces of equipment that customers in paper packaging are looking for. And so what we are developing with our raise is a minimum viable manufacturing process on our end. So that is our ability to uh, create these materials in a setting that will be scalable into the future and that also satisfies our customer pilot requirements. And so we're going to deliver on these customer pilots, iterate, improve our manufacturability there, which will then allow us to obtain offtakes to move into the real manufacturing setting, which requires chemical totes. Which, if any of you have worked in the chemical industry, this is a pretty standard method of producing and shipping chemicals around, and they're around a ton of material. And so we are serially de-risking our technology and our business proposition in lockstep with customer interest, milestones, and testing as we scale up. And we're not just doing this with dilutive funding. We've also actually been pretty successful with non-dilutive funding, raised 1.7 million to date, and we're planning to combine this with a couple phase 2 STTRs. And so what we have is a little bit different than other startups you may have seen before. And that is, our go to market, our business development strategy isn't about accumulating more customers and having shorter and shorter sales cycles and a customer pipeline that brings in more and more folks. It's taking the 8 to 12 that we're already talking to and deepening those relationships through their customer validation processes, through their processes that they use to evaluate new chemicals that they're trying to integrate into their sustainable products. And so, in the context I talked about before, that's moving from lab scale testing to the pilot, that is delivering in the 5-gallon Homer bucket that I just showed you, which will then allow us to get the offtakes to move into commercial trials. So, proving that manufacturability, that performance at full commercial scale. That's the 40 to 100 ton range, which would be enough for a very short run in a single day. And from there, we'll be able to get the commitment from customers to actually move into early commercial and mature commercial development. And this is a market which has a huge potential for revenue growth. This is why customers are interested. This $600 million per year revenue potential is real. I mean, this is something that one customer that we talk to in the US spends on this type of material per year. We don't anticipate being there for that moment because this is something that each of our customers that we're working with has been very upfront about. They're not nurturing a future supplier, they're nurturing and working with a technology they are looking to acquire. And so we see our exit sometime between early commercial and mature commercial development. The folks working on this include myself. I've been doing this for 4 years, managed to bring on a lot of money, grown the team, brought on all these customers. I partnered, with about every entity across New York State. And then also my co-founder and co-inventor, Ryan Scheel, is an expert in biopolymer development from Tufts, taught biotechnology courses there. He's really, really great at engineering bacteria, troubleshooting these material problems, as well as my co-founder, Kristen, who's already built her own startup company, worked in corporate for a while at GE Healthcare, and is really, and I tell her often, what makes this a real company. Also, for me, a couple of the most exciting things that happened recently is getting that customer revenue, but also bringing on some heavy hitters from industry. And so we have advisors who have tremendous experience in the field in selling and developing and acquiring new novel chemical solutions for the paper and packaging industry as well as the plastics industry. Jim, he was the business development director for North America for Solenis. It's the largest chemistry provider to the paper packaging industry for many, many years. And he is joining our team because he sees the potential for what our technology can do to change the industry. And flat out, he's excited to use his Rolodex of customer connections to propagate our technology throughout. And he believes in that. He believes it can happen. Keith, many years in the plastics industry at Amcor, and he also sees the potential in our tunable platform technology to answer these materials problems that no one else has been before. And I've talked a lot about our waste upcycling component of our technology. No one has done it better than Sharon. With their former company, Sweetwater, they're one of the few folks who have taken a second generation material, woody materials, and turned it into a profit through upcycling. And Emily is in the industry right now, and it's her main job to scout, find, and develop sustainable technologies like the ones we have. So ask, we're raising $1 million right now to meet this customer demand for pilot scale quantities of material. We've already secured 325,000. I have another 250,000 match that's committed. So I'm looking for 175,000 to maximize that match and then 425 to close the round. This will be combined with the grant funding that I talked about before. What we have in the bank already, as well as incoming through things that we've recently won, such as our Activate Fellowship, which is supporting myself, as well as some additional grant funding for R&D activities. We have a burn rate of 36,000, which I think is important to include because I want you to know that we're good with the money. I have a team of 7 people right now. You can do the math on that kind of burn rate with 7 people operating a materials and biotechnology R&D facility. We're going to use this money responsibly. We're going to use it judiciously to accomplish our milestones quickly and for the least amount of money possible. And so what we're going to be doing for this $1 million raise is working with a CMO and an engineering firm to develop our manufacturing process, working on business development, taking these larger quantities that we're developing and using them to get deeper commitment, contracts, further understanding of the market pull from customers. And we're going to bring on new teammates. I have someone who's got many, many years of experience in the field who's looking to join our company that can help lead these engineering developments, as well as the materials and patent costs along the way. And to reiterate, this $1 million raise is fitting the context of a 6-year journey, about 5 to 7 year journey, where we're anticipating to also raise a seed after the pilots in order to get to that early commercial scale, a Series A to move from that early commercial into a full scale, as well as a Series B. We're going to be co-locating and actually getting full customer integration for commercial manufacturing. Okay. I have touched on a lot of things that I think will beg a lot of questions. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you think.
Great, Chris. Thank you very much for the presentation. At this time, I'll open the floor to questions.
Chris, this is Don Delaria. Thanks for the presentation. Nice job. What's the actual application process of your product? Is it a sprayable coating? Is it a drop-in insert? How does a customer apply this coating to their packaging?
Yep, that's a great question. So for our beachhead, which is in molded fiber, this is spray coating. And so it's through traditional spray coating techniques, as well as some that are in development for full 3-dimensional articles. At the same time, we have a lot of flat sheet interest. And so for flat sheet, that would be more gravure and heat press. So roll-to-roll pressure and liquid immersion coating.
Okay, one quick follow-up then.
Please.
Is there a market there's a low-hanging fruit? I imagine that each packaging company or each package is very unique and has very unique products relative to what it's containing, whether it's a liquid, a hot liquid, a cold liquid, different properties of those liquids, dry goods. does it make sense to go after everything all at once and kind of, shotgun it and see who's most interested? Or does it make sense? Is there somebody that's just dying for a solution and, that's a big enough market to get going?
Yeah, yeah. I think this is a great question. It's relevant because it's kind of an internal discussion we've been having recently for our pivot. So, when I was talking about our beachhead molded fiber, that is really where we need to focus. I'm excited about the potential of flat sheet, and excited for, all these shelf stable packaging applications there. But I didn't talk about it, but key material properties for this are liquid barrier, gas barrier. And so for food service molded fiber, you only need liquid barrier. So that is when hot things get in there that are oily or wet, they're not going to bleed through. Liquid barrier and manufacturability, that's the low hanging fruit. And it's an unmet need because you need a liquid formulation for that spray coating. And so that's really where we're focusing. And I think you were getting at, like, are there specific product lines, like I don't know, like a Sweet Greens to go bowl, 9-inch to go bowl or something like that. That is somewhere we're aiming to get with customers, but we need to get further along our business development with them to get more specificity on what types of products. I think at our stage, they're a little bit cagey about telling us exactly where they want to apply it, but they're very open about the types of substrates and manufacturing processes where they have a need. Sorry, does that answer your question? Okay.
Lou, I see your hand is up. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, first, I just want to say I'm thrilled to see a company like this coming through Launch New York. I feel like we don't see enough of these kinds of life science companies popping up. I'm a little bit curious about scale. So you had mentioned co-locating with the fiber processing mills, and I'm sort of wondering, like, what kinds of conversion efficiency you get from the feedstock, and how that sort of scale of production impacts your COGS, and where that threshold for which size facilities make sense to do that in.
Oh, wow. This is a deep and loaded question, and I'm looking forward to a longer conversation with you at some point, but let me give the brief answer. So for co-location, there does have to be a minimum amount of product coming out of that location every year for it to make sense. And so that's why I'm focused on these paper packaging places. So there's actually the Smurfit Solvay mill in Syracuse, New York. They generate 30,000 tons about of these fiber rejects every year. And so for the conversion efficiency, we can take that 30,000 tons per year and turn it in about 1,000 to 2,000 tons of this PHA product based on our known theoretical yields, as well as what we think is practically achievable. The conversion doesn't change too much from our current technology basis, but the COGS and the way it impacts it is more about the contracting that we see with these customers. So actually my TEA right now, which I think I have a snapshot of here, is based off of getting these from free. So co-locating and saying, hey, the customer wants the product. We'll see if it shakes out this way or not. They don't want to pay more for it. So we're just calling our materials acquisition cost for that component materials as zero.
Oh, so are you saying you get your feedstock from them, and there was also an offtake with that same company?
Yeah. Like a
Okay.
company like Smurfit, yeah. Like they give us the feedstock and they will openly co-locate because they also want the product we're making from that feedstock. And so this is less a exciting material and more a process that we're proposing to drop in for these manufacturers, where they put their waste in and they get a cool new material they've been looking for on the other side.
Got it. And can you talk a little bit about the organism?
Sure. Yeah. This is a strain of E. coli, which there was a deep history development from first Japan, then SUNY, where I spun this out of, SUNY ESF. And it's been engineered. It's not a native producer of these materials, but we've taken native producer genes and put them in. We've done some modifications to ensure that metabolically I'm trying to figure out abstract ways to talk about this without giving away the sauce, but metabolically, they are effectively doing that in controllable means. That was actually a very difficult thing to do. That was the focus of my PhD. And that they can take it from diverse substrates. And so when I say diverse substrates, I mean hexose sugars, pentose sugars, fatty acids. These are things that other comparable fermentation to bioplastic technologies can't do. So that is, everybody can consume glucose, and by everybody I mean like every engineered organism. Very rarely do you find they can also use pentoses. And fatty acids, especially short chain fatty acids, are typically toxic to the fermentation. And so I'll give this one away for free because it's pretty exciting for us. So like acetic acid is often used as a preservative when you think about like pickled goods. Normally that kills fermentation. It's a byproduct from waste upcycling. But for us, it actually enhances our fermentation. And so we can tolerate very, very high levels of acetic acid, and it's actually synergistic to help us improve our titers and yields for economics.
Okay. And then just last part. So there's like a chemical pretreatment of the feedstock to break it into sugars, or how do you go from
Yeah, a biological pretreatment. So right
biological
now, this is based
Okay.
off of enzymatic hydrolysis. This is not, I should say, not a core focus of our IP. There's a lot of industry know-how in order to do this. All I'll say is that we're focusing on things that don't require chemical or physical pretreatment because that would be another unit step. That's pretty expensive. A lot of my prior academic work was in how much cost that adds. What I do plan to do, and this is something I've been talking about with our advisor, Sharon, she figured out how to do this well with the pretreatment. And so as we continue to deepen that relationship, plan on leveraging her expertise to do that efficiently.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Fun questions.
Are there any more questions out there?
Yeah, I love this. I'm a big fan of getting plastic out of our, waste streams in our bodies and wondering what's the incentive of these companies, and is it dependent upon public perception or government regulations or incentives? And just if you can talk more about that. I'm thinking about, what, if anything, might derail the motivation of these companies that are eager to have.
Yeah. The strongest incentive is legislations, always.
Yeah.
As they see all these materials bans, plastic bans, in Europe, the single-use plastic bans, these are their most motivating things. So I've had conversations with customers where they say, hey, we're trying to replace PVDC because we anticipate that will be on the chopping block soon. So that's a big part of their motivation, is they're just trying to build from a company sense, sustainable supply chain that's going to be resilient into the future as those types of environmental regulations continue. But at the same time, public perception drives those regulations, and it drives changing consumer behavior. And there's a huge generational shift that's happening with consumer behavior. And so there's a poll that a lot of my customers like to cite back to me when I'm always pressure testing. Like, why do you guys care? Like, why are you interested about this? And they'll cite that 70% of Gen Z and millennials consider the ethics of their purchase to be very important and are willing to pay more money for goods that align with their ethics. And so that is, they're seeing this shift that consumers will pay more for a greenium, which is another big component. And while those generations don't have a majority of the buying power right now, again, this is them being future looking, they anticipate they will. And lastly, I will add, even with all that future looking going on, there's a massive bioplastics market. It's anticipated to be 50 billion by 2030, growing at a 20% CAGR. They're buying it right now, and they're buying a lot of bioplastics, and it's a seller's market. They're taking whatever they can get. There's a lot of frustration in the supply chain as far as getting new materials of any kind, of any quantity. So it's a big reason that PLA has actually been able to dominate so far, because they've just been able to consistently get that supply out there. Sorry, I went a little away from your question, but
Oh, I appreciate all of
yeah.
that. So I guess along that line, what would get in the way of you reaching these milestones that you've laid out?
Oh, as far as customer demand, like what would get in the way of customer demand reaching our milestones?
Yes.
That's an interesting one. I I think we have more technical challenges in reaching our customer milestones than market
Okay.
demand. I think
Yeah.
market demand has been our strongest component so far. I mean, I haven't worked with many other startup companies. I've worked with one before this, but we really do have an incredible amount of inbound interest from very large CPGs, very large chemical providers, manufacturers. This is a real need that, like, and like I said, I pressure tested it. I called them. I called them after Trump got elected, and I'm like, "Hey, do you see this being an issue?" And they're like, "Not at all. We're looking, 10, 20 years down the road at a global market. This is not going away." What I do see as challenges are things like these key assumptions that we have in this techno-economic slide. And I've actually arranged these from lower risk to higher risk. So removing kanamycin, antibiotic usage in our fermentation process. That's just a costly component that we are pretty confident we can engineer out. It's a pretty standard thing, all the way to optimizing our fermentation equipment utilization. And so CapEx has been a real issue in biomanufacturing. And for us, that will be a major pressure test at a later milestone is how are we going to develop our go-to-market and our business model with customers in a way that minimizes that CapEx risk.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll jump back in with another question on that manufacturing side. So
Please.
again, assuming every customer is going to be looking for different formulation for different properties,
Mhm.
how do you well, first of all, question one is what's the anticipated cost of a co-located site, to manufacture at some kind of scale? And then two, how do you build that in such a way that it can produce, 15 different versions of the product, depending on customer specifications or requirements?
That is a really interesting question. Okay, so let me start with, I think, the easier component, which is the cost of a co-located site. Again, we're an early stage company. This is projecting very far down the road, so please take my TEA with a huge grain of salt. It's about a $30 to $50 million installation for that middle of the road, 10 to 20,000 installed manufacturing cost. So I hope that kind of sets at least the range there. And as far as building in predictability for different product lines, I think what you're maybe getting at, like, do we need different types of equipment for those different product lines? And the short answer is no. From the same, this is what we do in our lab scale, from the same fermentation piece of equipment, we can easily create these different products. It would just have different inputs and different modifications of that fermentation going on. So I suspect there'll be different formulation going on. How do we operate that fermentation equipment? How do we change the inputs for the aqueous formulation at the downstream component? But I can't really speak to this. This is not something I've actually put a ton of thought into. So it's a really good question, though. I'm gonna have to think more on this.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm getting at is, why not find something, a version of the product that people want, and then
Mhm.
go build a manufacturing site wherever that is, and
Oh,
bunch of it,
yeah,
sell it to the Smurfits and the other packaging players in the industry.
totally. That's 100% where we're focused. So our product right now, actually, I can share the TDS afterward if you're curious. It's called PIBO 2025. No relation to the year. And so that is what we're focused on. So we're taking PIBO 2025, which is this aqueous formulation that delivers the barrier, delivers the heat sealability, it has these important metrics for manufacturability, and we're taking that as far as it can go. So we're seeing what is the range of products that can be applied to. So I'm testing that on the flat sheet, where we're getting good results. I'm testing that on molded fiber, where we're getting good results. Once we've hit the limit of where that can go, and we want to explore other products, then we would consider a different product line. But I think I agree with you, staying focused on a single version of what we make is important for now. And I'll say that we're focused on that Pivo 2025 because it's one that had this is the challenge in making unique materials. There's not really a lot of academic basis to go off of for predicting how they will perform. This one had some. And so this is why we landed on this formulation. But we have these, just want to go back and point at it. So like this is the aliphatic component. So like this is really one set of our building blocks we can go after. But we're always keeping our thought, hey, once Pivo 2025 is generating enough revenue and interest that we have a relatively low R&D cost, and so it's not a huge business shift, to then explore how terminal alkyne PHAs can be used in more complex markets. I think then we'll be going for those kind of things.
Yeah. Do you expect your customers are going to be buying on price or other factors?
Price is always king. Yeah. Price will certainly be always the main driving factor. And so that price to beat right now is other bioplastics, which is generally relayed to me as customers is less than $3 per pound. However, I know for a fact that they're paying for other similar materials to mine, other competitive materials, and they're paying up to $5 a pound. Aside from price, it is a kind of a mantra that customers have, and usually from the CPG end of what they're looking for, is they need it to be home compostable, marine biodegradable, recyclable, and bio-based. And so those are all value add components that they want to be able to put onto their products.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
If I can follow on with a similar question, if in your TEA, I guess you were saying the feedstock cost was around 80 something cents a pound.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering how important it is to, I don't know, the company mission or however you want to frame it, to be using this waste stream as your feedstock versus just off the shelf sugar for 20 something cents a pound.
Oh, I sorry, that's not clear from this TEA. So the hypothesis is that using waste-based sugar from co-location will be cheaper than that 20 cents per pound. This 80 cents per pound is not just the sugar, but it's also other components that go into the fermentation and into the purification downstream. And so these are things like enzymes, surfactants, stabilizers, fatty acids that aren't waste derived.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that is a central component of my thesis. I'm always trying to test that as well, because what's been proven by other companies is off-the-shelf sugar is not cheap enough, and it's been a huge driver of cost. And so if in our upstream we're not cheaper, like our sugars are not cheaper than off-the-shelf sugar, then we know we have to pivot.
Got it. Okay. And what's it like getting the material? So at the end of the fermentation, you have this soup of cells and broth.
Yep.
What is the downstream like?
Yeah. These are fun questions. Okay, so soup of cells and broth, and as you can see here, it's not a PDF. It's an intracellular product. So we have to separate out our cells from our PHA granules. So these are nanoparticles of the material in there. And what we've cleverly figured out is that these nanoparticles are actually already perfect for forming into an emulsion. And so we keep them separated with stabilizers and do an aqueous simultaneous purification, removal of the proteins, DNA, cell debris, and formulation of those particles into a stable suspension that can be coated. So it's a multi-step process for accomplishing that, but it's purification and product preparation in the same go. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that was Ryan's move, and yeah, it's really impressive that it was a lot of work, and it's cool that he figured it out.
Are there any other questions? This is, it's been really exciting to hear, other people's insights. Before concluding, as a reminder, we're seeking to secure all commitments ahead of the holidays. Once we get into late November and December, things get a little wonky in the investment business. So if you do have commitments, then I suggest you get them in early. If you're interested in making an investment or reviewing due diligence materials, you can log on to your Venture 360 account. Feel free to reach out to me if you're having problems with that. And we are also, as an aside, working towards a goal of getting to 500 Investor Network members. So if you have other people in your networks that you know would be interested in this exciting company, please have them reach out to me, and so we can have a conversation on that side of it too. The links to the recording will be available following this, and feel free to reach out to me on email or phone if I can answer any questions. And Chris, amazing job today. And Investor Network members, thank you all for your time today, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone. This was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good stuff, Gene.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Yeah, drop by the
See you
table.
in Rochester.
Come check out our materials.
Sounds good.
Thank you
Bye.
again. Bye.